Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This afternoon I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Informa. This is an important book and one I found again very interesting and very contemporary. The title of the book is Offshore Oil and Gas Installations Security, an international perspective, and it's been written by Mikhail Kashubsky. I hope I pronounced the name correctly, Mikhail. Now, it's from Informa Law and Routledge, which is part of the Taylor Francis group. Elizabeth and I talked about this book because we thought it was very interesting. It's this book over here. And we've given it the review title for our written review, Oil and Gas Installations, a Target for Terror and Legal Challenge. And before I go on to that, you can see how important it is in 2016 with the international situation being really quite different in many ways from what we've faced in the past with enemies and people who want to destabilise countries. This is the book itself. It's a blue cover, sort of dark blue, royal blue I think you'd call it. It's part of the Maritime and Transport Law Library, you'll see from the spine at the beginning. There's nothing much on the back. It's a hardback book, and you can see from the structure, it's just under 500 pages long. That's the index at the back there. It's page numbers that they refer to. It's not a particularly big index by any means. Then you've got the bibliography, which is fairly big. You can see running through quite a few pages here. Selected bibliography. Then after that, you've got a whole variety of pages right at the back dealing specifically, you can see here it's on its side, dealing specifically with I'll just get to it, the appendix, which is there. You see the appendix is quite a large part of the book at the back, and this is actually the attacks, unlawful interference and security incidents involving offshore and oil and gas installations. And this is the list of them, which gives you some idea, if I just show it again, which gives you some idea of what is happening at the moment. Because this book is obviously very relevant to lawyers, but it's relevant to a wider community. There is an afterword by Dr. Alan Bursin from Washington, D.C., dated December 2015. He describes this as a monumental work by Dr. Kashubsky. And he gives a very interesting view of the book right at the back. Let's go to the front of it though, because again, this is a book, as I say, which caught our eye. There's the front page there. Then you've got the list of the Maritime and Transport Law Library. This is a heavyweight publication without any doubt. It's very much a practitioner's book, but it's also bigger than that too, because this issue is so fundamental. You think about international terrorism. It is an international perspective after all, and it's looking very much, it's an e-book as well as an ordinary book, you'd be pleased to know, but it's looking very much in its 9 chapters at the various subject headings which we have to consider in the 21st century, looking at security, the specific areas, assets, threats, target selection and so forth. Then, as I say, you have the appendix at the back. Then you have a detailed content section running all the way through for the various, and it's paragraph numbered for the various chapters. So you should be able to find things quite quickly. If you haven't got the stuff at the back on the index, you will have it here in the front. Then after that, you've got figures and tables used, and you've got the tables of conventions because it's an international perspective, and then you've got a whole range of other information, starting right with the foreword, which sets out exactly where we are. That's written by Dr. Michael White of the the Marine and Shipping Law Unit at the University of Queensland, and this actually sets the scene very nicely. Then we get into the preface again from the author, of where he came up with the idea. He's from Canberra in Australia. That's actually dated December 2015. I'm recording this in the summer of 2016. There are the abbreviations which are used, and there are a lot of them. You can see I'm just skipping through very quickly. A lot of them. Then we get to chapter 1. He kicks off straight away, offshore petroleum security context, with an introduction. And he says, he gives you a fact which gives you an idea of the importance of this. Oil and natural gas today account for over 60% of the world's energy supply. 1/3 of it comes from the offshore sector. So you can see immediately how important this subject is from a physical security point of view, and from a much more general point of view in terms of any form of sabotage, any form of espionage, and any form of direct action which could be taken. So what do we say about the book? Because this book is an important book, and one which I said has just come on the market, and one I've certainly found of very great interest to read and review. We live in an age of terror, and the terror of attacks on the innocent, and also the terror of attacks on specific targets vital to the world economy, remain very much to the fore in our minds. Particularly vulnerable worldwide, of course, are oil offshore and gas offshore installations. Hence the need for this timely legal text from Informa Law, which is called Offshore Oil and Gas Installations Security. This book here. A recent addition then to Informa's Marine and Transport Law Library. It's a rather terrific book. Yes, it will be of abiding interest to international environmental lawyers, but the clarity of the author's prose style will make it accessible, not to mention fascinating, to everybody and anybody interested in this subject, which, according to the author, Mikhail Kashubsky, again I hope I pronounced it correctly, has hitherto been surprisingly neglected. Quote, "The main reason for writing the book," says Kashubsky, "was to fill a specific gap in the literature and provide a useful resource for anyone interested in security issues pertaining to offshore petroleum installations." Worldwide, that's why it's international, and of course they're vulnerable. As the self-explanatory title indicates, the book, which started life as a PhD thesis, deals with the increasingly complex issues relating specifically to protecting and maintaining the security of offshore petroleum installations, which include both oil and gas. Writing in the foreword, a marine and shipping expert, Dr. Michael White, Queen's Counsel, from the University of Queensland, remarks that the complex legal questions emanating from offshore security issues are international in nature. So it's useful that part of the book's remit is to deal with the international conventions and the cases that have come before the international courts. In identifying the targets most likely to be attacked, the book then explores in detail the regulatory framework and the industry responses to the risks from criminal and or terrorist violence. As I said, very much a book for the 21st century, sadly, but one that I think is very important. It should be in all main maritime offices so that people are well aware of what is going on. The urgency of the topic and the need for a detailed study of it has become apparent in the wake of the alarming increase in terrorist attacks. Oil and natural gas, says the author, account, as I said, for over 60% of the world's energy supply, 1/3 of which comes from the offshore sector. It's worth repeating that because those figures are very important figures to juggle with. Lawyers, as well as risk management professionals and those doing research into this important subject, have at last access to a wealth of research resources contained in this one volume. In addition to the copious footnoting, note the selected bibliography and the illuminating appendix of almost, good grief, 50 pages in length, containing tables of attacks on offshore installations dating from 1975 to 2014, although there was a previous incident in 1899. But remember, it's pretty topical today, and you find all of that stuff at the back of the book. With its detailed table of contents and index, the book is easy to navigate. Certainly I found it very easy to find things very quickly. There's a useful and lengthy list of abbreviations and acronyms and a table of conventions. Let me finally conclude by saying, as it summarises the law of the sea as it pertains to offshore zones which are particularly vulnerable, the book will also provide immensely useful statements for policymakers in government and those professionally involved in the marine and petroleum industries worldwide. They should all have copies of this book in their bookcases because it's a fundamental book for them, and it would, I think, assist their businesses tremendously. Certainly it should be in every international lawyer's professional library. The publication date is cited at 2016. Let's just have one last look at it. Royal blue front cover. There's the front page, spine. It's part of the Maritime and Transport Law Library from Informa. Just opening it in the middle. International Oil Industry Responses. This is what they've been doing to try to deal with some of the problems. Lots of footnoting. You can imagine it's a detailed work. It's from Informa, so it's going to be written in a highish style. It's not going to be a very simple writing style, but it's got a lot of information. International oil industry responses again. Then remember what I said about these are all the incidents. And it really does make one think when you read about these incidents, the date, where it was, what happened, the details of the attack and so on. It makes very sober reading. Finally, let's just go to the front again. You see the Transport Library is very substantial for Informa, and this is one which I think is an excellent newcomer to it. And there's the front page, and there's the actual contents section. Well, I'd like to thank Mikhail very much indeed for producing it. I'd like to thank all the people involved. This is not a subject that's going to go away. We've got to be well aware, especially as we have continuing problems with world security. We've got to be well aware of how to protect our own facilities. I think this book is a great help to all of us. Do have a look at the review which is on the web in the journals, and thank you so much to all concerned. Bye-bye.